Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to welcome you to our Rare X Zoom launch. We're so excited to have you all here. I wanted to introduce myself. I'm the Executive Director of the CMT4B3 Research Foundation. I started the foundation a little over 2 years ago when we got the diagnosis for my 3-year-old son, who was diagnosed with Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease type 4B3. And me and my mother-in-law, Robin, have been on this journey ever since to try to develop a treatment and a cure for all the patients suffering from this devastating disease. And we have been lucky enough to partner with RareX, who is going to be implementing our new patient-led patient registry, which is very exciting because the fastest way to move the research is to get the patient community involved. And the more we know about the patients, the more we can research and we can try to develop a treatment. So it's really exciting, and we're so happy that you're listening to this and you want to be involved. And we are so lucky to have partnered with RareX, who just announced their partnership with Global Genes, which is another force to be reckoned with. And we are going to hand it over now to Megan, and she is going to demonstrate to us how we can all sign up for this amazing RareX portal. And it's super easy. We've been working really hard to develop these surveys with other patient advocacy groups to make the patients feel empowered, not take up too much of their time, make them easy to understand, and to make it the most accessible for all of you. And we're so happy that you want to take part in it.
Thank you so much, Iris. And I am here with my sidekick, Tom Hume, who is also a rare parent. I'm a rare parent of a 22-year-old with Phelan-McDermid syndrome. She's missing the end of her 22nd chromosome. And so she's nonverbal. She has developmental delays, sleep issues, GI issues. And unlike Iris and Robin, when she was diagnosed, I did not start a foundation and I did not dive into the science. I was too overwhelmed. When she was about 10, I was asked to help the other volunteers with data collection, or they called it a registry. And for 10 years, I led that and I learned a lot. And we didn't know what we didn't know. So at RareX, we are here to take the burden away from your organization so you all can focus on taking care of your family members and raising the necessary funds needed for research. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen. And I just want to say for a moment that you all should be incredibly proud of your organization. Sorry about the slides. Some diseases exist for 20 years, 30 years without a patient-centered data collection. There may be data collected by other, doctors or researchers, but what you're doing is so forward-thinking, and the fact that this foundation has only been here for 2 years is just really impressive, and you should be proud of what you all are accomplishing so quickly. First and foremost, RareX is a nonprofit, and we were created out of incredible frustration from patients, advocates, researchers, and industry partners, pharmaceutical companies and biotechs. There are over 10,000 rare diseases. Very few, less than 5%, have any sort of treatment, and things aren't moving fast enough. So in 2016 to 2019, these advisors came up with what some of the problems were in this drug development cycle. And the biggest issue was taking the burden off of the organizations like yours and getting high quality data for the researchers and industry partners. So that is the flame that started the fire. We are a platform that collects patient and caregiver contributed data, and we'll talk mostly about that today, but we have the ability to connect to existing data in other places. So if there was a fabulous research study being done in another country or by another researcher, we have the technology to also connect to that de-identified data, which is incredible. Most importantly, we have a huge focus on getting the data out the door. So you don't want to spend time giving your data and then having it sit somewhere. You want it to be seen as many people as possible. And RareX does a great job of that. We don't own the data, and your foundation doesn't own the data. You as a participant own it, hence my shirt. That means you decide how you want to share the data. Do you want to share it very broadly, or do you want to put some restrictions on it? But I just want to be clear that the ownership is you, the participant. We do not sell the data. We don't sell it to biopharma or anybody else. And we don't do research and analysis. We're here to help your community get the most out of this data and get it shared as widely as possible. We are not going to replace your current or your future research studies. We're here to complement it. So your foundation has come into RareX after doing a lot of due diligence. They looked at all the tech platforms that are collecting data. Some only do it in English, some only do it in the United States, some don't collect genetic reports. There's a lot of, it's like buying a car. There's a lot of different ways to look at this. And they, after much due diligence, decided that RareX answered all the boxes. Most importantly, I think, for your community is the ability to collect data internationally with the awareness of data regulations. You all are busy. I know as a rare parent that, getting more than 3 hours of sleep in a row, or getting a shower 2 days in a row, or even getting 3 meals a day is an anomaly. So why are we asking you to do something that's going to take up your time? And one of the things is this is going to come back to you, that as we get enough data, there will be aggregate or summarized data that will be shared back to your organization in a de-identified way, but it will allow you to see how your answers compare to others. And this is great. You don't have to wait 5 years for somebody to do analysis and have it in a publication. We're also collecting data on all systems of the body. We're not asking about just the questions for the CMT4B3 because we don't know all the things that CMT4B3 may include, and we don't want to make assumptions. So we start with a survey from head to toe, but this also allows for you to answer questions about your family member's health that may not have anything to do with CMT4B3, or you've been told has nothing to do with CMT4B3, but it may turn out in the end it may. So we are collecting data on all systems. There's no cost to your organization. This means that all the money that you're raising on golf tournaments and fundraisers can be used for other research efforts. There's no cost to researchers, and that gives us a level playing field. So this data won't just be available to big pharma that can afford to buy data. This data will be available to every type of researcher in the world that qualifies for it. And that qualification has to do with how you choose to share your specific data. The data is structured and standardized. And by that, I mean, your foundation didn't make up questions and put them on our platform. We have outside advisors that identify the best surveys for all of the different systems. We will be adding new surveys all the time because we are building this for all rare diseases, but we started in the neurodevelopmental disorder area. So we may not have a hematology survey today, but a year from now we may. So there will always be new surveys being added. Governance is a very sticky, important thing that organizations like mine were very burdened with, and your organization will not be burdened with. Governance is everything about collecting, storing, and sharing the data. And that includes privacy and security, ethics, legal issues. And we are taking all that responsibility on, which gives your organization time to focus on the more important things. The way we're getting this out to researchers is so forward-thinking and internationally friendly. It is a federated data access analysis platform. So the researchers go through one door. They don't have to know your disease exists. They look at the data, they query it, and they can even recruit for studies. So this is a really a big strength of RareX is that we will have more researchers looking at data, even stumbling across data for diseases they've never heard of. So again, your data will be returned to you. If you're interested in being recruited for a study, whether it's a small survey that somebody's doing at a university or whether it's a clinical trial being done by a drug company, this is a great way to be found, because those researchers can go in and they can look at, multiple things like age, geographic location, symptom, age of onset, and they can narrow in on the patients that will qualify or likely qualify for their study. Then they give us the ID numbers, because they cannot ever know your identity. And then we will contact you about these studies. And then it's up to you whether you want to participate or not. Again, the researchers, the biopharma, and your foundation will not have your identified data. If there are other organizations that develop over time in other countries for this CMT4B3, then they can also have access to that aggregate data. So you'll see your organization up here on the top, and there's several other diseases here. Most of them are neurodevelopmental disorders. The point here is, this is not just a very locked in, narrow data collection that is specific just to your disease, which sounds like a good thing, but it's not. All of these diseases come through a different community page, and I'll show you yours. It's beautiful. But once they get in, they're in the same database. And then why that's important is because researchers can look across diseases. And a lot of our diseases have very similar symptoms. And so unless a drug is being developed for gene therapy, there may be drugs or devices being developed based on symptoms. And someone who's never heard of CMT4B3 may stumble across data and they may say, wow, we didn't know this disease existed, but this is exactly the type of community that we are developing a drug for. So that's what's so wonderful about this. As with any research study, you have an informed consent. With ours, because you own it, you have a data sharing preference where you decide if you want to share your data very broadly or with some limitations. Demographics, and then health and development. Every patient or participant that comes through RareX answers this first one. This is head to toe. This is where we ask about every system of the body. Based on your yeses or unsure, you may have another survey added to your dashboard, and that's these little ones over here. We call those level 2 surveys. If you say no to pulmonary, you are not going to have a pulmonary survey to answer. If you say yes to neurological, you will have a neurological survey to answer. If you say yes to seizures and we don't have a seizure survey, but 6 months from now we do, then you'll be notified to say we now have a seizure survey. And then at the bottom again is the researchers. This is where the magic happens. We need as many researchers in the world to see this data. And we are committed to having, doing outreach to researchers. So as your foundation will reach out to their researchers, but those are the usual suspects. We want to get eyes from people that have never seen your data. So just a little history. In most situations, this blue researcher has to know your disease exists and has to know that your organization has data, and then they have to ask for that data, which your organization had to pay to design and develop and maintain, and all of those burdens that I talked about earlier. And then this organization decides whether that researcher's study is worthy of the data. In RareX on the right, all of these 10,000 plus rare diseases, are putting can put their data into RareX, answering the same standardized surveys. That doesn't mean that we're not going to drill down into what makes a CMT4B3 patient different than others. It's just not going to be done with the word CMT4B3. The symptoms will be asked about in separate surveys. And then over here on the far right are the researchers that can go into this data and look again across different diseases. So what do you need? Email address, password, be mindful of the browser that you're using, Google Chrome, Safari version 14, or Microsoft Edge. Please don't use the other ones. We are, you can use a mobile device such as a smartphone or a iPad. we were having some user issues, that it wasn't as great with level 2 because of the way it was designed. And I heard yesterday that every month we're doing an update, and every update has some improvement. So I can't promise you that the mobile app is, or the mobile device is going to be the exact user experience, but it's getting better with every month. You don't need a lot of time. This doesn't need to be done in one sitting, but you do need to get in and get started so we can remind you to come back. So you can find a link in the chat where Iris will put the link today. She'll be sharing it in social media, in emails, and it will be on your website. From that link, you will go to the community page, and you will set up your account, and you will do a patient consent and a data sharing. The first round of data questions, if you say you're a caregiver, are all about you. It's your marital status, it's your name, it's your birthday, and the consent is you consenting to having that data stored. Then you will add a patient, and you will add your family member, and then you will consent for their data, and then you will decide how their data is shared. So I just want to highlight that, so you don't think that you've got through these two things and then they show up again. That's the way it has to be for international data regulations. The minute that we take any information from a participant, they need to consent. And then once you get through that process, then you're off to the surveys. So on the web page, you'll see this. You go to patients, and underneath it says newly diagnosed or data collection. And then over on the right, you'll see where there's discussion or explanation of what this is. And then right here, and you don't need to write it down, is the actual link to your community page, or the front door of the CMT4B3 Data Collection, which we are all here and excited about. And next to this beautiful boy is an explanation of what this is. And the red Get Started button is how you enroll. If you've enrolled and you can't remember your login or something, you can go back in under Login. As you scroll down this page, there's other information. At the very bottom of the page, in the left-hand corner, there's a translation button. This is only for the community page. Currently, everything else is in English, but that is going to change. And I'll handle that later. Currently, the available translations are English, Chinese, French, German, Hindi, Italian, Portuguese, Russian, and Spanish. That's not internationally comprehensive. It leaves out Hebrew. It leaves out a lot of the Asian translations. And we are doing our best to make sure that we serve all your needs. At the bottom is also the frequently asked questions. And if you click on the question, you'll get the answer. So if you do hit the translate button, everything here should be translated. So you hit that Get Started button, and the very first screen you're going to see is this one. You haven't even gotten to the consent. And here it's asking for your information, not your family members. And if you're outside of the United States, you need to click I acknowledge that I'm located outside the United States and that this information will be transmitted to the US. At the bottom, you can check 1, 2, or 3. And it's important that if you have more than one role, you identify this now, because you can't change it later. We have to do it through the back door. So if you are a caregiver, which I believe most of you are, you click caregiver. But if you are suspected as a carrier, we would like you to also click as a patient. And I know that's not a great word, but it's what we have to work with. And so that means that as a patient, you will get access to the same head-to-toe survey and the same additional surveys that your family member will. If you're only a caregiver, then you'll just do the consent and the data sharing, and that's the end of your game. And then you add a patient, and then you get into the details. If you have had a family member that has passed away, you need to connect a person who's lost a loved one to rare disease. I know that you guys have set up accounts more times than you can count. And so I'm going to go quickly through here. You get the email, you create a password, you get the verification code. And this is the screen that you'll always come back to. This is what, when you go to log in, this is where you're going to be. At the bottom is the privacy policy and the terms of use. We encourage you to go through those documents. Once you log in, there's another term of use, and that's for a company called Matrix, which is the technology company in which RareX sits. Once you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see a button for accept. This is the informed consent. All of you have signed informed consents in hospitals and doctors' offices. They usually look very legal and very confusing and are very long, and generally nobody reads them. If you don't read it, it's not really an informed consent. It's just one more thing that you hit accept. So I encourage you to read this so you know how well protected your data is and how well it will be stewarded. We put it in a question and answer format, so it's easy to read. And if you want more details on some of the answers, you can hit learn more. Again, you'll have an informed consent for both you and any family member if you are a patient. The second to last page of the informed consent, you have to again answer some questions about what your role is, and you answer all that apply. Down here it says, I may be contacted for follow-up research surveys. You absolutely want to say yes to this, or you won't find out if there's a new seizure survey. And the last question is, I want to be contacted about future studies. This is not a commitment that you will do the studies. It just means you want to find out about it. So I highly encourage yes on both of these. On this final page, be mindful if it's asking for your name or your child's name. And depending on which informed consent you're in, it should be clear. So then you're off to the demographics or general information. And you can't skip any questions, but there is the ability to say, I prefer not to answer. These ethnicity questions are right out of the World Health Organization. We will have a more specific ethnicity survey that is optional if you'd like. Down here, clinician is a silenced button that's not anything that you have to worry about. But where it says rare disease, select all that apply, you click there and you can start to type CMT and it should go right to it, but scroll down and it will say CMT, not CMT4B3, because in this field, we want to get the broadest information. You will have an opportunity to get more specific in what's called the diagnosis survey. So this is where you own it. You have two questions. You get to only answer one, and you can't go past this page if you don't click one of them. The first is, I would like to share my data with any researcher doing any type of research, which includes research on ethnicity, genetic traits of different populations, socioeconomic studies, and so forth. The second option is, I want to share my data with researchers doing research in health, medical, biomedical research. Both of these are great answers. Most of the families to date have answered number one, but it's your prerogative to answer whatever you want. You can change the answers to the survey in the future. The next page is completely optional, and I did not check any boxes. This is where you really put limitations on who can see the data. The first one says, I only want to share data with researchers from non-commercial. That means you don't want to share with drug companies, biotechs, pharmaceutical companies. So that's your prerogative. I want my daughter's data to be seen by everybody. So I did not choose that. The second question says, I only want researchers that have an IRB approval. That means that their own institution, their university, their medical center, wherever they work, has reviewed their study and given it a stamp of approval. Again, I'm okay with some math major who's just playing with numbers seeing my data, but this is your choice. You can skip that page. After this, we're trying to help your foundation understand who's done what so that you can decide how you should spend money in research in the future. So do you have biospecimens? If so, where? And maybe it was something to do with CMT4B3, or maybe you have biospecimens somewhere else because of something else. It doesn't matter if it's related to your disease. We are not collecting your medical records, but we would love to know if medical records could be connected to your account in RareX. Would you be interested? So this is a future-ish question. Other possible data sources means, were you in any other studies? Were you in a study at a CMT Center of Excellence? Were you in a study in your country about quality of life? Whatever it is, if you check yes, you just type in. You don't need to have every bit of information. We'll do the homework. Some of the studies that you may have participated and forgot about are listed here on your webpage. So if you go to Science, you hit Research Projects. It has all the research projects, including the gene therapy, early work, and mouse models and things like this. These three are the studies that you may have participated in, because these are the human studies. So we have the wonderful natural history study in the UK. We have the neuron study with Nemers at DuPont Children's Hospital. And then there's the Inherited Neuropathy Consortia, which is at the Centers of Excellence. This is an opportunity to share your name and email, not your medical information, just your name and email with this foundation. And if there's new foundations that pop up around the world, that name and email could be shared with them. And this is so that they can, have a more robust list so that they can contact people about conferences and research and fundraising and things like that. The bottom question you want to say yes to, if you want to be able to see that your data in the summary charts that we'll send to your foundation. It's all de-identified. So you went in as a caregiver, you did your consent, you did your data sharing survey. Now you want to add your family member, presumably your child or grandchild. So you click Add a Patient. It's in the upper left-hand corner. If the doorbell rings and you leave and you come back 2 weeks later and you're like, I don't know who I was answering for. In the upper left-hand corner is always the name and the role. So if this is Brittany, the caregiver. She might have, Susie Q, patient, and so forth. This is the beginning of a dashboard. If you go in a couple weeks after you start and you're like, wait, I know I answered 5 surveys. Where are they? You're probably in the caregiver dashboard. So you want to make sure that you get to the right dashboard. And over here, there's this book with a plus sign. That's going to get you the dashboard for this person, Brad Lane. So again, Add Patient is in the corner. You can see the roles. This is the health and development survey I told you that everybody has to answer. So this is the head to toe survey. You'll start with that. It's not optional. And for every yes or unsure, you may have something called a level 2 survey added at the end. Other name survey is 1 question. It means if you changed your legal name, and that's for coding purposes. Race and ethnicity is a deeper dive into ethnicity because some diseases are more prevalent in certain geographic or cultural areas. And these bottom ones are optional. I would encourage you to answer them. These are about what medical procedures you've had, what medicines you're on, or what supplements you're on. And you can see here, it says time to complete, number of questions. I would say the time to complete, if you are an English first language, these are way longer than what will actually take you. So this is an example of how broad the questions are in the health and development survey. Have you had issues with your eyes and or vision? Now, I know some of you are going to say yes to this because of pupils dilating or whatever. Remember, your answers are about the health of the participant, not only what relates to CMT4B3. So if your family member has diabetes because you have diabetes, then you answer yes to, whatever questions are applicable. So at the end of the health and development survey, it's going to ask about genetic testing. What was your reason for it? And it's going to remind you to upload your genetic report. You don't have to de-identify it. We will de-identify it. But I encourage you, the first time you go in there, have your genetic report scanned and ready to upload it, and then you're done with it. And you don't have to go back and look for it again. To do that, it's on the left-hand side of this. So you'll see the caregiver, I go to documents. That would be my genetic report. So if it's your child's genetic report, make sure that you're in their profile, hit upload. You know how to pull it from your computer, hit genetic test, and then it's there. What's nice is if 2 years from now you can't find your genetic report, you can go back into RareX and you can download it. So this is kind of a shelf for you to store it on. So now we're at level 2. You've completed the head to toe survey. You've chosen to skip these surveys for whatever reason. And here are the level 2. So they're going to be a little bit more detail. Example of a level 2 is, very general issues about that system. And if you say yes, it says, when did the symptom appear and what was the age of diagnosis? That may be the same day. It may be unsure because you didn't notice it because there's so many other things going on in the first 6 months of life. You didn't know what was what. So unsure is an acceptable answer. But for a lot of people, the parent had a gut. They went to the doctor. The doctor said, no, don't worry about it. And it's a year before anything is in the medical record. So symptom first appeared as what was your gut? Age of diagnosis is when did somebody finally put it in the medical record? And that's a really important gap because we need to show that the medical community may not be listening to us. At the bottom of every level 2 survey, it asks if there's additional issues. So I'm providing an example that you may have in CMT4B3. So nobody asked about IUGR. So I say, yes, there's an additional issue. I type it, I say when, and I describe. In the growth survey, nobody asked about microcephaly. So you say, yes, there's another issue, and then you just type in microcephaly. In the skin survey, this particular, patient had keratosis pilaris. And so they typed that in. So you shouldn't feel at the end of this that you weren't asked about all of the issues that are happening. You should feel like there was either a question or a way for you to add information. The diagnosis survey is another place where you can put in free text any additional information. In the eye and vision, this patient had pupils that did not contract to light. So it was described as tracking issues. So now we're looking at the dashboard. So what have you completed? You've completed the head to toe survey, the data sharing, and the informed consent. This gray tab is what's new. 6 months from now, your family member or you have a new symptom that you had said no to. If you look on the right side of the screen, every survey, after you've completed it, can be viewed, edited, or emailed, which means you can email it to yourself or email it to your doctor or email it to your mother-in-law. Edit allows you to go in and change a no to a yes. And when you do that, you may get an additional survey. This is very important. We don't want this to be a one-time snapshot. We want this to be a history. We want to see the progression of CMT4B3 across the patient's lifetime. Some people might call that a natural history study. If you answer this once, it's a snapshot. We appreciate you coming, but we think that you should be in there at least once a year. And I would encourage you, this is part of taking care of your family member. There's going to the doctor, there's going to the pharmacy, and there's updating your data as things change. And every time you change an answer, it's date marked. So when researchers look at this data, they're going to see this progression of disease, and that's incredibly important. There's a quality of life survey. It is not great for me. I have a nonverbal child, and so I had a hard time answering it. And so there is an answer unable to answer because of my child's communications. We have a better quality of life survey that will be coming on in the next few months. So you may hear about that. Again, this is an optional survey. So how is this different from other research studies? Again, this doesn't replace them, but this isn't at one institution. This isn't the NIH of the United States study or Dr. John Smith's study in France. This is your data collection. It is the CMT4B3 global data collection for all of the CMT4B3 patients in the world. We want everybody in one place. so people can look across as many patients as possible. Because you're putting data in the same place as many, many other diseases, we have that ability for researchers to look across disease. We'll be returning the aggregate data to you. Very rarely are researchers able to return data to the community. So you spend all that time answering questions or going in and having that all-day appointment, but you never find out how you compare to everybody else. And in RareX, you will. We're focused on data that's about drug development. So we're not going to ask questions that a researcher's just curious about or they could get funding for. That said, regulators like the EMA and the FDA, they do care about quality of life. They do care about burden of disease. So we will have different types of surveys, but the end goal here is that this is data that will help with decisions about drug and device development. For the fifth time, this does not replace other researchers, but it will complement it. So if somebody wants to do a study on CMT4B3 a year from now, they could go in first to RareX, find the patients that fit what they're looking for, and then we would notify you about that. So that would make it easier for them to find patients. And again, this is for years and years and years to come. This isn't a one-time thing. So I just want to remind you, these two studies are still recruiting. So Dr. Holden's study is in the UK, and Dr. Butchbach is in, is it Philadelphia? And you can find these on your website. So if you enroll and answer the surveys, you'll be counted. You will be seen. Your disease, your data will be seen. It's really fun to have these like wristbands. This improves awareness at the grocery store and cocktail parties. This doesn't improve awareness in your doctor's office or in drug development. The way to improve awareness of your disease and what you all are going through every day of your life is data. And that's how you're going to get your story out. This is a microphone for you to say, my child doesn't sleep, my child has pain, my child's not eating what they need to. And so it's really important. Your organization is already starting to work on recruitment for other studies. So I would encourage you to do this and do this quickly so we can get some data back that's interesting to you. On November 16th, mark your calendars. At 8 p.m. Eastern time in the United States, there's going to be a research update. I don't think you're going to want to miss it. Iris, will that be recorded in case they cannot make that time?
Yes, that will also be recorded.
Great. I'm going to stop sharing screen. And again, tell you all that you should be incredibly impressed and proud of your organization for doing this. What I did was a good idea, but we didn't know what we didn't know, and we probably lost 10 years of doing mediocre data collection. And what your organization is doing is going to move things much more quickly and access to much better data. Robin, did you have a question?
I have a few questions. When will RareX have a list of the patient-led foundations on their website? So other patients can find us if they go on, now that you're going to be associated with Global Genes, patients may start going on here and looking if they can become part of this data collection program.
Sooner than I thought. So I heard from Tom recently, he can fill us in.
Yeah, I think it'll probably be up by next month. We'll have a page that will list basically any group that's currently has a data collection program with us.
Great. And can we store any other medical records besides the genetic report?
Unfortunately, no. And the reason is RareX has an institutional review board, an IRB, and they police all of the ethics and science and legality of what we're doing. And currently our protocol says we are collecting genetic reports for the purpose of curating them. That means pulling the data from the genetic report and putting it into the technology platform so that your answers sit with your genetics. We do not have a protocol for collecting sleep studies or vision reports, but we can. So as we add diseases, we may be adding other reports. But this is just speaks to how seriously we take our security and privacy and ethics, is that we can't collect what we haven't gotten permission to collect.
Okay, and what does a patient do if they have a question while answering the survey? Do they contact us or do they contact RareX? How they're stumped with one of the questions, they don't know how to answer it, they can't move on.
That's a great question, and we'll put support@rarex.org email in the chat. The answer is both. You're going to get your answer from support@rarex.org. That's where, if you're having technical issues, if something didn't seem to save, or whatever your question is, but I would encourage you to CC somebody at the foundation. So you, as the foundation, know if your families are not having any problems, or, wow, I've seen 4 emails about this. We need to contact RareX. So we want you all to have a finger on the pulse of what your families are experiencing, but the actual answers will come from support@rarex.org.
And where is that? Is that in the slides that you gave us, or how will they know? I mean, they're gonna know because if they're listening now, but is that on the website at all? Where we have our community launch a landing page?
Robin, that's a fantastic question. So we'll put it in the chat now. And I will put it in the slides that I'll be sending to you today. I don't know that it's actually on the platform. I'll have to double check.
And I have one last question. So how many patient-led foundations are participating so far with RareX?
So in the last year, since we took off, we are working with over 40 different diseases to date. We're still adding 2 more groups this year. But that includes 68 or 70 patient organizations like yours, because some of these diseases have several organizations. And so they are, we work with all of the organizations in a disease, whether they like each other or not. But we will be ramping up and probably bring in a new group of about 10 or 15 every 2 months. And that may, increase in 2023.
Thank you so much, Megan and Tom. This is wonderful. We're so happy to be partnering with you. It's very exciting for our community.
One thing I have not been able to share yet is that I said we were only in English once you're in the data collection. We are getting translation faster than we expected because we have sponsors that felt strongly about needing translations. So I would say early, maybe the first quarter of 2023, we should expect to see Spanish, French, and Portuguese. I can't speak beyond that. I do know that we have people enrolled from over 55 different countries currently, and that's across 1,000 or 1,500 enrollees to date. And more than 35% of those enrolled are outside of the United States.
And for any of our patients that are watching and you need a translator to help you fill out the survey, we are more than happy to help facilitate that and find someone to help you walk through and answer all the questions in any way we can help.
That's great. I also want to add that when Iris came to us, I said, I know that there's other registries for Charcot-Marie-Tooth because I've met the hereditary neuropathy group. And she explained that although these are organizations that your organization collaborates with and respects, there's 4 types of CMT, and each type has 10 or 12 more subtypes. That's putting us at 100 different types of CMT. And that the surveys that have been available to date haven't drilled down to all of the symptoms that your family members may be experiencing. So I just want to say that if you participated in one of the other surveys, that's great. If you were frustrated that they didn't ask all the questions, that's why RareX has been chosen. So this is, again, we encourage research, but this was a situation where something didn't already exist, and so this was started.
And that was part of the reason we chose RareX is because they were taking surveys and standardizing them across all rare diseases. And we're finding with a lot of our new patients that we are enrolling in our studies, they were originally misdiagnosed with another disease such as muscular dystrophy or CP. So you may have taken other surveys before and felt that they didn't apply to you. And that's why we're so lucky to have partnered with RareX because their surveys are standard across all diseases. And we really feel that this gives us the most power, especially when it comes to CMT4B3, which many of doctors have described to me is like CMT plus, 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 plus. Like we classified as Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, but we have a lot of symptoms that are the complete opposite of like the classical characteristics of CMT1A. So we're really happy that we get to be a more accurately assess our patients' symptoms.
And I'm going to strongly encourage you to get your genetic report. If you don't have it, reach out to Iris and she might be able to lead you to like, you can get that from your doctor or you can get that from the lab, but you need that genetic report because those researchers are going to want to see the details of the genetic report, not what you type in. They're going to want to see what the lab found. And that's incredibly important. There's something called genotype phenotype. What is the genetics and does that change what the symptoms are? And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. So if you don't have your genetic report, reach out to find out how you can get it. If you have it, make sure it's scanned and you can find it and get it uploaded as soon as you start enrolling. Those outside the United States know that every country has different data regulations. We take that incredibly seriously. That's one of the reasons why we can't just throw up a bunch of translations. We need to make sure that we are meeting the data regulations in the country where we're going, whether it's France, whether it's Brazil. GDPR is a very general data regulations across 40 European countries, but every country has their own interpretation. But the whole world is not Europe and the United States. There's India and Asian countries, and all of them have different versions of data regulations. And RareX won't be promoting in a country until we've made sure that we've met those data regulations. And they're very stringent, and we take it very seriously. So I just wanted to make that clear to all of our families. I know we're almost at the hour, Iris, but I'm happy to answer any other questions. Or if your families have questions and want to send them to you and you can forward them to us, that would be great.
I have one last question. So when will all the data be ready for the researchers to actually, when do the researchers start pulling data off this website?
That's a great question, Robin. And the answer is it's up to you and us to some extent. If there's a disease with 5,000 people easily to reach, we would want about 50% in, so it's statistically important to the researchers. Your disease is not that large. So what's the number of people that you can reach? And let's get to at least 50% of that very quickly. What we don't want to do is brag about this wonderful data collection to your researchers and to other researchers, and they show up and the shelves are all empty. We need data for them to be wowed. And we want them to be wowed the first time they go look at it. So we're not going to send researchers towards this. We don't want you to send researchers towards this until you get enough people enrolled. And the enough is up to the size of the disease or publications. If the largest publication to date said 30 patients with CMT were in this study, then you want to get above 30. In a lot of our diseases, the publications are on 7 or 11. So it's a complicated question, but it's important. The more people we get in, the sooner you can have people looking at the data. Well, it's been a pleasure working with your community, and we're not done. We will continue to work with you, and we will continue to improve the RareX technology, improve the RareX surveys, and get the word out to the researchers around the world. Again, if you have any issues, please email support@rarex.org. And Robin, can you put the well, it's not going to work in the chat because they can't click on it in a recording, but to get the link for this community page, you can find it from the website. But
yes, I'm gonna upload our website right now, and I'm gonna upload the video, and I'm gonna put right below it a link to the community page for people to start logging in and signing up.
and that link will probably be frequently shared on social media as well.
Exactly.
Great. Okay. Well, congratulations. We're excited to see the numbers soaring. And you guys are doing a great job.
Thank
I hope
you.
everybody's family members stay as healthy as possible. And we're excited for you. Thank you for your time today.
And
Thank you. We appreciate all the classes and everything we've learned and our ability to participate with you. So meaningful to us. Thank you so much.
Best of luck. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.